All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the council meeting for end of June. It's a pleasure to be here. First, I'd like to ask Dale Marie, please, to open us up with karakia.
Ai, tēnā koe te tūru. Manawātia a matariki mā puanga kia koutou I te ia waipa. Ka tūwhiri au I te hui I te karakia tākiri mai I te ata. Tākiri mai te ata, ura te ata, kāke te ata, uru mai te ao. Uru mai te ao te tangata ki ana rerenga ki tōna kaua tēnei te ao. Hea mārama I rongo whakairia hui e, tai ki e. I tēnei wā, I pānui au te mate I John, tō tātou priest I te kātorika I konei I te awamutu. Haere, oki atu rā e te rangatira. Mena mate o te wā, I mea mai a matariki, kia whiua koutou, ki ngā whetū, ki runga rā, tī rama mai. So just for everybody and on camera, matariki actually signifies where we pay our respects to those that have passed in the year. And I picked up this morning of the passing of our Catholic priest in Te Awamutu who has left us. So tēnā tātou, back to our chair. Tēnā koe.
Dale Marie. Right, in opening comments this morning, I thought we would maybe just speak to a couple of pretty special community events that I know have occurred over the past week. So I might just hand over to Lou in regards to a service ceremony yesterday at Memorial Park in Te Awamutu.
Yeah, thank you very much, Liz. Yesterday, we actually planted the peace roses. For those that are not aware, they're unavailable as standard roses within New Zealand. So it takes quite a lot of care and effort to find it. The Rose Society, in their own right, went out and propagated these roses. It's taken them a period of about 18 months to get them up to growth stages where they need to be. The peace rose is actually named as in Belgium, by Field Marshal Barry, who actually was offered the rose as the end of the war to put his name, but he didn't do that. He called them peace roses. And in doing that, we've had these roses placed in the original memorial, 3 of them in the middle of the memorial, which aligned the sunken cross, and at each end a red rose, which was called Lest We Forget. So collectively yesterday, we had a little ceremony for the planting and replacing these roses with the RSA, the Rose Society, the Council, and the War Memorial Maintenance Committee, for those who are interested, in quite a little group there. So it was an excellent day and well attended, and we had light refreshments afterwards.
Yeah, thank you, Lou. Look, and thank you to you in particular, and the team behind you who organised this, because it was something quite unique, quite special. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
On the same.
Quickly I saw it online on Facebook, on the council Facebook page. So that was really good yesterday. So it was really good.
Mm-hmm.
Well done.
And over in Cambridge, we had a special service as well at the Cambridge Community Marae. So Mike, I think you were in attendance.
Yes, I was through the chair. Much Leaky Friday, of course, the National Day of Recognition of the Māori New Year. And over in Cambridge, we had a waharoa at the Cambridge Community Marae, which is Ngā Haue Whā. It was attended by, I think, probably north of 150 people. Dale Marie was there, Philip was there, Claire was there, Susan was there. And look, many members of our community and a lot of organisations, including I saw St John's there, for instance. And so we celebrated or opened sort of a new entranceway there, including a whole new concrete pathway through. So it's really sort of tidying up that area, giving the marae a proper entranceway to sort of meet and wait before one's welcomed in through the karakia. There's a whole lot of new fencing that's gone in there. Painting, decks, all the mattresses have been replaced, and that's really largely through the generosity of many people in the community, including Grassroots Trust, and there were some trustee members from there also. So it was just a fantastic community day, and then at the end of it, we were very well fed through a massive hangi, which we definitely stayed around for. So yeah, kei te pai there. And one last thing there is the committee, it's a community marae, and they're always looking for new community members. So it's really non-threatening sort of place to go to. It's not as formal as say an iwi or a hapu-based marae. It's a really easy place to actually go on to. So I'd encourage anyone who's keen to make contact with those folks. Kia ora.
Thank you, Mike. Right, sounds like it's been a busy few days. Look, lastly, I just want to acknowledge, obviously, the passing of John Bishop. We did acknowledge him during last week at our long-term plan meetings, and we did a minute's silence, but his actual celebration of life was just held day before yesterday, and it was I know people around this room were there, and it was a real acknowledgement, and just wanted to mention again just how special a man he was. So anyway. All right, everybody, we'll crack into our meeting agenda now. So we've got apologies. Got Mayor Susan for personal reasons is away today, and other than that, we've got a full house. So can I have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Lou. All in favour? Carried. Disclosures of members' interest, any this morning? Nothing. Good. Moving on to late items. Any late items? No, then we'll move on to the confirmation of order of the meeting. Move in a seconder. Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Dale Marie. All in favour? Carried. Right, moving on to our confirmation of minutes. So we've got our first one on the 28th of May on page 11. Any changes, or everyone's happy with the minutes as they are? Mike's going to move those. Bruce is going to second. All in favour? Carried. And our second set of minutes on the 4th of June on page 19. Any changes? Claire's looking happy. That's a good sign. All right, Claire's going to move those minutes. Andrew's going to second. All in favour? Carried. All right, everybody, thank you for that. Right, we're going to move on to our next item. But in fact, we're just going to take a short 1-minute break. We have a guest who's going to be speaking to us this morning, and we'll just check on his arrival. So just talk amongst yourselves for a moment. All right, everybody, look, thank you and sorry for the delay, but I'd like to extend now an exceptionally warm welcome, please, to Antoine from the Waikato River Authority. It's a pleasure to have you in our council chambers today. I'd like to pass over to Dale Marie, please.
Tēnā koe e te rangatira nā te ranginui. E te rangatira no te wiwi, te whenua o wiwi. Nau mai hara mai ki te tepu o te kaunihira a Waipa. Tā mātou waimari i tai mai koe i konei. Mihi nui i raro i o Matariki mā puanga i tēnei wā. Tēnā koe, tēnā koutou, i tai mai koutou i o Pakahiwi o Tupuna. Nau mai hara mai. Nau mai ki tēnei whare. Te whare mō taku mokopuna e ki ana, te whare o te punga werewere. Engari, ko mātou he puku mahi ki roto nei, nau mai, hara mai, e hoa tēnā koe.
Thank you, Dale Marie. And Antoine, I might just hand over to you to introduce yourself, if that's okay. And then we'll head into your presentation. Thank you.
Hei, kia ora mai tātou. E te tuatahi e mi ana kia koe I whakatau I a hau I runga te kaupapa I tēnei rā. O te rā, ko te ngā āuatanga o Matariki, nō reira e mihi kawana kia koe. I tikana te kōrero, o tētahi o ngā waiwai no te whenua wiwi, tētahi te atu ki Ngāti Ranginui, o te rā no Ngāti Apakura me Raukawa hoki. Nō reira he mihi kawana e te whanaunga. Tawa ka tawa. So I was just saying that yes, you're correct. I do have ancestors from France, and I do have ancestors from Ngāti Ranginui, but I'm also from Ngāti Apakura and Raukawa, and we're talking to each other because we're relations. So that was nice. Thank you for the welcome, and greetings to everyone. Gee, it's not often I go to a meeting and there's so many smiling faces. So thank you for the warm welcome, and thank you for making me feel really warm this morning. I don't know because it's the weather or anything, but I am really feeling the warm welcome. And kia ora, Marcus, good to see you again too. I've got a bit of a presentation for you today. So it's got probably more slides than I want to talk to, but perhaps I'll talk to a few of them. And you've got a copy of it, so I'm sure the team will circulate it, and it's got some facts and figures and things which will be helpful to you. But I thought today might perhaps give you a bit of an insight, because I'm a new chief executive for the Waikato River Authority, and auspiciously I'm only the second one of many generations of CEOs, and maybe to give you a bit of a feel for where I'm at and where I'm wanting the organisation to go at this particular point in time, and cover off a few important things that we're working on that will be of interest to you, leaving enough time for hopefully for questions if you've got any or comments you might have as well. Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Antoine. Okay, I think we'll start the presentation.
Who's driving? Oh my goodness, I'm driving. Okay, I thought I was passenger. Sorry about that. Okay. The first couple of slides is a bit of an overview of where we're at the moment, and just looking just a little bit into the future in terms of strategy and culture. So many organisations, they'll focus on strategy and all of the things like objectives and strategies and actions and those types of things. They're important. So in terms of our work, aligning lots of the key bits that we do to Turi Whaimana, the vision and strategy for the Waikato River, aligning that with our purpose, our report card that we do every 10 years, and the restoration strategy is really important. So when people are looking at those documents, they see the line of sight between them. It's really obvious. It might not be so obvious now because they are the vision and strategy is quite a straightforward document. You could read it in one go. But if you picked up the Bible of the restoration strategy, you'd need a good week to have a good go of going through it, and you might not remember where you started. It's very sophisticated, complex. And so I think there's a bit of work for us to do to have a line of sight for those things, to make it really obvious why people are doing this and then the benefits of what they're doing. So that's something we're thinking about in strategy. Identifying the things that make a real difference and investing in those. We're lucky in terms of our treaty settlement. My forebears, before, I can't take credit for this, I've got the rewards of it. They decided to put a significant part of the treaty settlement in an investment portfolio. And in normal times, when we don't have Trump announcements midweek that cost you tens of millions of dollars, that's been building really nicely over time. And so we're able to invest the interest and the dividends that we get from that investment portfolio into the restoration work we're doing. And over time, that's getting larger and larger. And so that's quite an important part of the work we're doing with thinking about, yes, investing right now, but in the future, we'll be able to invest more. We're exploring intergenerational ways of doing things while delivering today. And this will be a challenge for you. Many of you have lots of experience in the community and other organisations, and you understand those challenges. Some of them are now, next week, next month, next year, but some of them, like infrastructure, and you'll know this better than I do, they're going to take quite some time. And they might be beyond the time that you're here in this office, but you're trying to set things up so they are easier for future generations. We're in that same game as well. We're thinking about these things that we can do right now, this week, next month, next year, but some of the work that needs to be done won't be able to be done for 10 years, 20 years. So thinking about what's the right order of things is really important. There are things called disruptions, interventions, and crises, and crises in the plural rather than one by one. They're becoming more and more normal for us. They also, obviously, they're challenges, they're threats, and they're risks, but they're also opportunities. I often use the analogy that when you're in war, the war chests all open up, and all of those things that were impossible in peacetime are possible in wartime. Notwithstanding, I'm not being disrespectful to things happening in the world at the moment, but to just say there's a different way of thinking when you have a crisis to when you're in peacetime. And so my view is that some of the thinking that we have during wartime or in significant crises is quite helpful to also have in peacetime. So when there's calm, sometimes it's actually good. This is the right time when we should actually open up the chest and invest in things that we would have done when there's a crisis, or do things where we're feeling actually we could be really bold and ambitious right now in calm waters rather than wait for the crisis. You should wait for both, do them both in peacetime and when a crisis goes. There's this famous saying, never let a good crisis go to waste. Now's the time to do things. So just trying to recognise that those can occur. And the last one is we're wanting to empower a new generation of guardians in kaitiaki. We've got a small team in my office in Hamilton. We've got good relationships with our river iwi, but they don't have really big teams. They're small teams. There's always a cap on the resources you have. You'll know this in terms of your team. And so we're needing to empower a new generation to carry on this good work. And we need to be not just saying it, but being active in it. I don't have all the answers of what does that actually mean? How do you create a new generation of guardians in kaitiaki? I'm assuming that's people rather than AI. Those are people who are going to be out there in the field doing good work, educating people and our kids coming through, inspiring them to, in their daily lives, do things a little bit differently or be mindful of the things that they're doing in every day. And then they might aspire to become our scientists and our technicians and our kaitiaki and our planners and our counsellors in the future. So that's the strategy. And then in terms of culture, if you can do both strategy and culture, that's when the magic happens. A plan in of itself doesn't make change. People make change. And so that includes all of the context of where they're living, how they're living, what their daily lives looks like. People are busy, people are struggling. And so you're trying to inspire them to do something that they may not have otherwise done on a normal day. So we're looking to inspire creativity and exploration, intergenerational enterprise and learning. So thinking a little bit differently, doing things a little bit differently, and capturing the hearts and minds of Waikato people is really important. David Attenborough has that wonderful quote where he says, now this is a bit of a test for me because I'm trying to remember his voice, and he says, people will look after the things they care about. And if they don't care about it, they won't look after it. Words to that effect. He said it much more eloquently than I did, but it's a truism. If people care about something, they're more likely to look after it. If I tell them to look after it, they might go, yeah, maybe. But if they truly care about it, then they're more likely to look after it. So that's something we've got to do. And we want to challenge our river users to make a difference, holding them to account. There's a lot of people that rely on the Waikato and the Waipaha rivers. Our good folk in Auckland, they rely very heavily on the Waikato River.
Yeah.
Very, very heavily. And I think there should be some reciprocity that's equal to the value of them needing to use the river. I think we're a sharing people, but also there needs to be a reciprocity. For those things given, there should be something received. And so there's going to be opportunities right now where we're actively talking with some of those entities, including Watercare, about the reciprocity. And there'll be opportunities for leaders of the Waikato to go and talk to the leaders of Auckland and say, hey, let's have a conversation about this. How do we live together and prosper? So those are all in front of us. And then, of course, we want to role model the best science in Mātauranga Māori. We want to bring our best things up to the fore. So we use our instincts, our intuition and our intelligence, but we're also well informed by people. And that puts us in the best place to make good decisions. Hopefully I haven't used up my 20 minutes. That was the first two slides. Those are probably, I thought, probably two of the most important ones about strategy. And then maybe I'll talk a little bit about some of the things we're doing at the moment. So of course we've got a restoration program. We fund about $6 million, we allocate about $6 million a year for restoration activities, which are done by community groups, wonderful people who put their hands up and say, yep, I want to go and do some fencing. I want to go and plant some trees. I want to work with landowners to look at different changes of practice, those types of things. It's amazing. And the $6 million hasn't changed much over the years. It seems like there's so many hands that go up, and you can't get more than the hands that are going up at the moment. You can really, really encourage them, but that seems to be about, I'll call it a sustainable number that's coming through. So we're actively looking at different ways that we might do restoration. So at scale, where we might bring a number of partners together and say, hey, let's do a really, let's go for it. Everybody's all lined up. We all bring our collective knowledge and funding together. Let's make a difference in this place. It might be in a catchment, it might be on a particular river or lake. That's something that we're actively working on at the moment. We should see results of that towards Christmas. You'll have ideas about some of the things that you go, geez, if only we had everybody here together in the same room, we could make a difference in this place. Those are the kinds of conversations we'd like to have. Because at the moment, we're doing lots of little bits, but we don't necessarily see the benefit of them as a collective, as a sum of them. We're going to have a new program manager, so we've just actively recruited a new funding manager. Our funding manager's been with us for 7 years, done a wonderful job. Michelle Hodges, she's finishing and going to do something else. But that's great. That's kind of like, she's more than 7 years. Actually, she said she's been doing it part-time for about 10 and full-time for 7. Wonderful contribution. And we've got a new wonderful person, Tracy Dean Spears, who you might know. She's been doing some wonderful thing with a number of different agencies, Fonterra, Dairy New Zealand, DOC, Regional Council and other things. So she's going to be a real wonderful asset to us. So looking at restoration at scale, restoration partnerships and some of the hard stuff, we get a lot of people putting their hands up for relatively straightforward things to do, but the hard things that take a lot of time, effort and money, people go, oh, maybe not. It would be good to people going, oh yeah, we could, if we've got help, maybe we'll put our hand up for those things. We're doing a review of the vision and strategy for the Waikato and Waipaha rivers, Te Ture Whaimana. It's the first comprehensive review. I know they had a look at it a few years ago and they thought, oh, that's a big task. Mm-hmm. No one say change it. So we've been given that task. So we're just working through what's the learnings from 14 years. The government is bringing in a new system which will replace the RMA. I'm not exactly sure what that system is. I've read the reports, I've heard the announcements on a Friday, but I still can't put my finger on exactly what it is. So that's coming to us before Christmas. So we'll soon work out what that is, and then how does the vision and strategy fit with that system, but also the things we have control and influence over here in the Waikato and the Waipa is what do we want to get on and do? Some of those things we don't necessarily need the government to be telling us from Wellington what we need to do but don't do. We can give ourselves permission to do. So quite keen to have those kinds of conversation. There's going to be a bit of work on methods and targets. Currently, the vision and strategy is supposed to have a vision, supposed to have objectives, supposed to have strategies, supposed to have methods and targets. It doesn't have methods and targets at the moment. There was some good work done in the past, had all the sensible things you should probably do in it, education and advocacy and some things for different agencies and entities that had signed up to do. For whatever reason it was, probably politics and things in the past, hasn't happened, but we're looking at populating that area of the vision and strategy. So we'll be coming and having conversations with yourselves about how's it been going for you, what's worked, an honest conversation about what hasn't worked, what's missing. That's good to know so we can move into the future. How are we going for time? Once I get started, sometimes I get excited about this stuff. Statutory advocacy, I'm going to do this one real quickly. But I think what statutory advocacy is, it's a bit, we were having a conversation at work around the difference between advocacy and education. Education is about personal growth, learning things that you don't know. And there's different forms of education, and it's about learning things. Advocacy is about trying to get someone to do something that they wouldn't have otherwise done, or changing their mind. So at the moment, lots of our statutory advocacy is with central government, where we've got ministries working very, very fast, doing ambitious pieces of work. And when you do stuff fast, you can't think about everything. And so we're helping them to think about the things that we think are important in regards to our rivers and our lakes and waterways that they may not have considered from our perspective, to make sure that those things are provided and at least considered and thought about. And it'd be fair to say it's been challenging. You sort of, you present to a select committee and you get nervous and excited and you get your 10-minute slot and you try to say as best what you want to really say, really succinctly, and no one asks you a question and you went, oh, they're not interested. They read the submission maybe, they heard me, but they're not really interested. I might have to try something different. So in statutory advocacy, we're doing the normal things that we would do, make submissions, present to select committees, talk to ministers, both in Wellington and locally. And I have to say the local MPs in the Waikato catchment have been really helpful for us navigating the machinery of government, helpful trying to get us meetings with ministers and cabinet, those sorts of things. So I don't want to put them all in the same box, but just to say Wellington is a challenging environment to change people's minds when they're set on something. No matter what persuasion you are, that's a challenge for us. There are some fast track consents, and in the Waikato there's about 12 of them that we're interested in. Some of them we know something about, and some of them we know absolutely nothing about. The few of them, they look like they were looking for a home, and the Waikato seemed like the closest home to where they might land. We had a bit of a test with one of them. Thankfully, it's outside of your district, so we can talk frankly about it. And it was a very large retirement home. And it felt like the sort of thing that would probably suit the fringe of a city, perhaps, or an urban environment. But it's put right in the middle of a farm. And it will outnumber the current village that it's situated close to. So there's a village that's really well known, right by the Waikato River, and they're going to get 600 plus units arrive, with residents who are not resident of that area arriving with all of their expectations. So that's quite a significant change in a very short period of time. And I don't think the process allows for the things to be thought through about who's providing the infrastructure. Well, we know the council. Who's providing the roading? Well, maybe someone's going to be providing that. Who's providing the community facilities? all those kinds of things that you'd expect to have when you're in an urban environment. So those are all question marks unanswered by the application. So it just gives you a bit of a flavour. Some of these applications are I was going to use the word inappropriate, haven't been considered fully yet. It's probably the better term. And they don't have all the democratic conventions that you would normally expect, because that's why they're called fast track. They're designed to sidestep the community and the normal processes. So they're a challenge for us. I'll just do a couple more and then let's open up for some questions. We've got a report card. So every 10 years, we do a report card on how we're going. There's one done in about 2015. So this is for the period 2015 to 2025. NIWA is leading that work. And in the background, NIWA is having a restructuring. So we're busily trying to make sure that the scientists we've got working on this work are going to still be working on this work in the next few months. We're running some wānanga with River Iwi, which is really going to be really interesting, interrogating the learnings over the last 15 years, but also providing a bit of a story. There's the numbers that you have, which tell a story, but there's also people's experiences, which we're wanting to capture as well. So that's going to be later next year in October. We're doing a bit of a brand refresh. Because I don't know how many meetings I've been to, and I've been called the Waikato River Authority or the Waikato Regional Council, or variations of the acronyms in different meetings. I had one person just gave up and said, "Oh, you guys." And so there's a bit of awareness. It's interesting when you have your brand next to everybody else's in the Waikato and they all look the same. So, which on one side is a good thing because everyone's connected to the Waikato River, but on another sense, no one knows the difference between who all these different agencies are and what they do. So there's a bit of work for us to do in awareness, and the confusion, the alignment with our partnership with our River Iwi. And we're really keen to adopt a Māori name. We've got a number of different entities and agencies dropping their Māori name. We currently just called the Waikato River Authority. It's quite funny when you're doing a speech in Māori, ko tēnei mātou te rōpū nā te Waikato River Authority. And everyone goes, "Oh, okay." No one remembered what I said except for Waikato River Authority. So that's something we're just thinking about and working with the River Iwi partners about. If we did have a Māori name, what might be an appropriate one, and one that's not so long, because if you go to the Māori Language Commission, they'll give you a name about this long.
We tried really hard.
They just do that, yeah. So we're seeing if we can come up with something that people will remember, is memorable and is aligned with our kaupapa. There's a slide with our team. I'm not going to go through those. So our whole team can fit on one slide. Most of the team are part-time, which is really interesting. I'm the only full-time employee. So on a Friday, you'll find, if you want to pop down to the offices, you can knock on the door and you'll see me. I'll give you a cup of tea. But most of the team are moving in and out and work in the community. So it is quite a nice balance of having people who are working, but also they're connected to their communities. And I've put Tracy's name in there as well. So we've got some new members, the new funding manager. We've got a special project that's up and running, looking at restoration projects, the way we fund those and the way we do that. I mentioned that a little bit earlier. We're looking at bringing on board a strategy lead to be owning the vision and strategy and our board strategy and some of that work. We currently all share it, but we think a dedicated person is really important. And the good old-fashioned communications advisor. We need someone to help us communicating with everybody. We all do that, but we all have our own skills and strengths, and we think someone who's a real strength in communicating what we do broadly is really important, both internally and externally. And then I've got some funding facts and achievements. I'm going to probably leave those, but maybe just pick one of the things out. So I talked about the $6 million grant. So we've awarded about $78 million to date. It's about 486 projects. And there's lots of trees planted and lots of fencing. Lots of hectares of land have been protected and things. Lots of really awesome projects. So it's been wonderful. In the new role, I've had a little bit of time to get out and see some of the awesome work that people are doing.
Anton, can I through this, is that okay? Antoine, can I ask you to please go back to the slide, to the slide of your outcomes, because I think it's really important to note, and I'm just noting the outcomes, is that as each of the 5 river iwi were negotiating their settlements, they chose to contribute the $210 million in the initial investment into a fully contestable public fund for everybody to benefit from in the Waikato and Waipa rivers. And this was the intention, was to get those results that might be on that's 486 projects funded. That was the intention, was to garner the support and the collaborative effort and create the care for all of those rivers and catchments. And I think, so 12 years in, even I think we signed our settlement at Raukawa in 2010, so it's 15 years in. That's what's been delivered into the community out of that treaty settlement process. And I think that's not to be underestimated, but to be celebrated, because that's what, as a collective, our region has been able to achieve together. And in a world where there's so much conversation about separatism and what's different, actually this is the river, the rivers have brought us together, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. That's really neat to see.
I kind of see it like, I like to describe the treaty settlements in a bit of a circle sometimes. And one part of that circle is about the relationship that the river iwi have with their respective councils in the partnership. So the JMAs, the joint management agreements, so that's a deliverable, an outcome of that. And then you have on public, the Conservancy, on the public estate with the Department of Conservation, there's the accords with the river iwi, and they're doing the good work that probably a lot of people don't know about, but there's some really awesome work happening on the conservation estate. And then there's the private land and the private area, which is a challenging area, and that's where we fit in terms of having our fund available and our expertise available working on private land. And many of the projects we have, they have a low profile. People want to just do things in their own time in their particular area without all the media. They don't want to talk to our comms advisor who say, oh, this is a really cool story. They just want to do the good work. So there's some real unsung heroes out there who are doing amazing work on private land, and that's where we're doing our work. That I like to celebrate, but they might not feel the same. They go, they're just happy that they've done something and contributed to it.
Mm-hmm. Antoine, that's been very inspiring, and I'm sure there's lots of questions around the table. So we'll start with Lou, and then we'll head over to Marcus, and then Mike Peter.
Firstly, thank you very much, Anton. That's incredibly good, and I think that unfortunately for all of us, it's difficult for us to actually ascertain just exactly what you completely do. One of the things I actually chair the joint committee for civil defence at a regional level. And I would suggest that we have a communication with you at KEG, that is the coordinating executive group. That is something I think that we need to look at, improving resilience within our communities. You talked about having a war chest and all that, and that really resonated. And I believe strongly that we need collectively to look at the risks and the efforts that are put in by your authority that can improve our resilience in future times and coordinate. And we present just like you on the fast track legislation and everything else, and coordinating with each other, we could probably improve our voice. So just throw that in the court for you and let you think on it.
Yeah, well, thank you, and thank you for the invitation, and be happy to come along. I'm immediately thinking of there's some resilience projects or activities that come up when you're dealing with a crisis. But if you've got a plan and you go, oh, we've thought about this crisis, we've planned for it, and this is the way we're going to do it, and this is the time where we can build some resilience into it. We can do it in this way that creates the resilience. That's a good thing to do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, Marcus.
Going to put you on the spot, but how has Waipa benefited from the WRA? Like, what are some like?
I should have
key
brought the
projects?
stats for Waipa.
Yeah,
That's on me. Yeah. Well, obviously, we've just done some stats of the catchments, and some of our board members, including Gannon Ormsby, who's from Ngāti Maniport has a particular interest in the Waipa river catchment. And I think there'd been an assumption that Waipa was the poor cousin, because we often talk about Waikato, 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 which is really important. And when people are listening out and they're from the Waipa and they're listening for the Waipa name, they might think that it's not in our thinking. But the Waipa catchment has received significant funding in comparison to our other catchments, so the lower Waikato, the central and the upper. And I don't want to say it's a competition, but what that's probably reflective of is the particular groups who are well organised and have got buy-in from landowners doing really good work. And we tend to, where there's energy and momentum, we should support it, because support waxes and wanes. Over a period of time, you have passionate individuals, everyone's on board and there's lots of work to do. That's when you invest in it. And then there's a downside of things. People get tired, or they've got other responsibilities. The uptake's not so much. Then there's a bit of a downside of the curve. So Waipa has definitely been on the up and up and up for quite some time.
You're quite right. In fact, one project that springs to mind in the Waipa would be the Punu River Care, which I know Shannon and the team there have benefited from some funding in the past, but that's such a success story. And there are others as well. I think Claire's got another example.
Yes, Antoine, like I'm involved with the Taia to Taia project, which the River Authority has funded, I think, about $400,000. And that's to undertake planting and pest control, so on the ground work. And that's the Mangapiko catchment, extending from.
We just did a site visit with some of our board members up to the Mangapiko and just saw the amazing work that's been done.
Yeah, and that's
it was
greatly
incredible. It was,
appreciated. Yeah, and I think the relationship through like sort of a longer term, working together is looking really promising as well. And I'm also aware of some other projects around Pirongia Village, private landowners that got funding through the region, the River Authority, that were planted probably over 10 years ago now. I'm thinking of Tony and Shirley Brown in Pirongia Village, and they've got before and after photographs which look really amazing. Yeah,
There's
I
some
think really
amazing
appreciate the
groups.
work that you do. Yeah, it's really great.
And I don't want to understate some of the challenges though. So particularly in the hill country, there's some real significant challenges for us getting people on board. It always feel odd, turn up in my nice car and I've got my office clothes on, and you're talking to people who have been working in the hill country for a long time, and there is a particular culture of the people who live in those areas. And me just turning up with my good message works for some people, but it doesn't work with others. People need a bit of time and trust. Go, oh, who's this person just turned up? He's only been there for 11 months. You need to be around, you need to prove yourself to build trust, and you often need to be referred from others. And so I think that's a strength that you have because you're known in the community. So if you see there are opportunities, like you're saying, oh, gee, have you touched base with the Waikato River Authority? That goes a long way because we will turn up and our team will turn up and be helpful. But to have that referral or someone who has a relationship, that's the gold.
Absolutely. All right, we'll head to Mike Pettit and then Andrew.
Thanks, Chair. Kia ora, Anton. Two or three things to sort of comment or and ask on. One is, hey, we are Cambridge Primary School back in the day were early adopters of applying for funding to sort of help the awa. The school backs onto it, and we had a couple of cracks at that and were successful, and teamed up with the Tree Trust in Cambridge and did some really good work and good learning and planted about 1,800 trees and that sort of thing. So that project still stands today and is well used by the community. The next one is, Marcus sort of alluded to about projects in the Waipa, but I was going to sort of talk about Lake Te Kutu, and it's maybe not for you, but you might have the detail, but more so probably for our staff, of that catchment of Lake Te Kutu feeds directly into sort of Karapiro Stream, which is within 100 metres into the Waikato River effectively. And I'm just wondering how we've hooked into that fund in the past. It's more a question for the organisation rather than yourself specifically, but it would be good to know because we're looking at doing a lot more work down there. We're looking at taking trees out and trying to stabilise banks and stop silting and that sort of thing. So it does directly impact, and it would just be a good thing for us to know as elected members of how we've engaged and maybe how we're looking at engaging in the future. I'll do my last one next, and that's, hey, to make a difference to the Waikato River, I understand it's an intergenerational thing. It's not going to happen in 10 or 20 years in terms of the impact that I think ultimately what the authorities set up for and what the rest of us want. So I understand that, but coming back, so Waipa's to spend about 110 million, I won't have it exact, but somewhere around there on a new water treatment plant that's still being finished at the moment over in Cambridge Way. And throughout that, there was sort of conversation around that a couple of hundred metres downstream of the outlet of when this beautiful water is going to be released, that it really just gets, you'd never know it made any difference to the river. And it's 0.1 or less than 0.1% of the flow into the river is going to come from these pipes. So then it was like we didn't meet the minimum requirement, the new water requirements. We sort of went beyond that and went to sort of top level. But my question really is the opportunity cost of using some of that money. If we'd gone for not gold star but silver, but still met the water requirements, clear water requirements, and what has to be discharged back into the river. What's your take on that? Like, I'm just going to make up a figure. This isn't real, people. That we could have done it for 90 million, all right? And that $20 million could have been vested into other areas of making the Waikato River a cleaner, greener place, because that's the ultimate goal. So what's your views on, because these water treatment plants I'm sure we've got some coming. There'll be others done in other territorial authorities that impact this river. Of how much do we go Rolls Royce with these things? How much do we just go, we're just going to meet the standard and stand up to those that push back on that? But we're still willing to invest to help you folks and to help anyone actually make the water quality of the Awa better.
I think you've summed up the conundrum or the challenge really well. You as decision makers are trying to balance all of those things, what you hear in the community and the expectations, our river iwi and their long-term relationships with the river, and they want to have a relationship with their water bodies that's similar to what their ancestors have had and the water quality or characteristics of that water was at that time, but also pass on that to their children in better stead than what they've had it. And then you as a council, ratepayer funded mostly, you have a certain amount of money now and there's access to debt and you're paying that off over periods of time. All of those things are all in play. That's why only a certain number of people put their hands up to go on councils, because it's not an easy job to do. What do I think? I'm probably an and person, where I say, yes, let's have the highest quality possible and practicable from our public infrastructure. And let's be where we can investing in those things that we know are going to make a difference short-term and long-term. Yeah. And let's create the opportunity for people in the future to be able to do things that beyond our means.
Yeah,
so
sure.
And.
Nice. All right, cool. And I won't mention the clan because someone else might mention that. So
Head over to Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. So my question is, we've sort of spent the last 150 years getting our water quality to where it is, like going from good to not good. The River Authority has been in place for 14 years. So have we seen any positive impact over that time? And what kind of time frame are we looking at to get it back to, where we would like it to be?
Yeah, that's such a good question. My answer in the first instance is that we are seeing gains, benefits, enhancing in places. And you know when you see them, like the Mangatutu is a really good example. When we went up there, we're like, wow, we know what it was like, and now we can see what it is like. There has been a change. When the kids you can hear them coming down at 3:30 and they're going for a swim in the waterhole where they haven't been swimming for 40, 50 years, we know that's made a difference. And so there are places like that in the catchments. And at a slightly broader scale, we've seen the benefits of some of the investment in dairy, particularly in places like the Waipa and others where you've got high sediment loads. You're seeing the measurable difference in the reduction of sediment and other things. Usually when you go after one thing, you end up going after a few things, and we're seeing measurable differences. However, there's a but here. We're not seeing the overall improvement of our water catchment, Waikato, from Hooker Falls down to the river mouth. Overall, if you add it all together, we're not really seeing much change, but we are seeing the change in places. So the work we're doing is working in those places where people are sustaining effort over periods of time, but we're not necessarily seeing the benefit of joined up action like in catchments at the moment, because some of the things you need to do are hard, they're costly, or they take a long time to do. So that's something that we're looking at doing. There was another question there, and I've just lost my train of thought.
Just about, what our, do you have a time frame in mind?
Oh yes, well, there was a Waikato River independent scoping study done, and depending on what kind of action you wanted to take, it could be a 70 to 80 year challenge. I personally don't like the idea of going back when we say, oh, let's go back to the way it was, because that was the way it was. I always like to say we're going to the way it's going to be. And so it brings people to think they have a chance of creating a future that's going to be good for their children and grandchildren, that's better than now. And in my mind, what it's going to be, it could take 70, 80 years to fully restore, but there are some things that we might see much sooner than that if we have a concerted effort.
Dale Marie.
Kia ora ua. I was just sitting back waiting and watching all the questions and listening to everything, because this for me, the Waikato River Authority is one of these great mechanisms that drops out of magic with co-governance. So the other thing I'm not sure whether, and I'd like to have a little bit more explained around, Waikato Tainui have a river allocation as well, don't they? That they don't take out of the river, as I understand. They have an allocated amount that they choose not to take out of the river, is what I understand. There's some kind of allocated amount that they, as part of settlement, and this was a discussion that was had when we gave Auckland the water, because I was actually one of the governors that didn't want to give the water to Auckland, and then I was reminded that our people live up there, so they need the water. But my whakaaro was, stop opening all those blooming car washes and all those other things that are exhausting the water up there, because we don't see Auckland dealing with taking down their water intake because they want more from the Waikato, and we know that they're going to still need more because their growth is still growing as well. So one, I want to just touch on how great this is as magic with iwi, but yeah, they have an allocation, don't they? They have a water allocation that they leave in the river.
I'm not aware of a formal allocation of water as part of the treaty settlements. I know those were discussions that Sir Bob Mahuta and others had with the Crown around different kinds of arrangements, but they're not currently one of the arrangements.
Do you know that, Steve?
Yeah, so maybe I could talk to 2 points and just to augment Antoine's kōrero. So in the water allocation policy process, Dale Marie, iwi were looking to secure water allocation, and within that allocation was a proportionality for the environmental benefits for the river, and that was 7 years of working through that policy, water allocation policy process in the Waikato with all of the other players, and it wasn't successful, but that was something that particularly Raukawa and Waikato Tainui were fighting very hard for. So didn't get there, but it's all on the record if you wanted to go and read it. So it's certainly an aspiration, I think, and water allocation is a really important part of this. And unfortunately in our RMA process, we separate water quality from water allocation and water quantity, and that leads to some very difficult and difficult decision making. Andrew, to your point, I just want to refer to Anton's point about the scoping study, because there was a lot of science and a very strong methodology to inform the treaty settlement and how it was rolled out. And NIWA's scoped a number of different scenarios, Antoine, in terms of the restoration and how quickly, so in terms of balancing time, cost, risk, and a range of factors. The ultimate scenario where we threw everything at the kitchen sink, NIWA's advice was that it would cost $1.2 billion to restore the river to achieve the vision and strategy within a shorter time frame. Obviously, $1.2 billion wasn't on the table. And so the 210 million investment fund was negotiated knowing that it would take longer, but also knowing things like some of the nitrogen loading up around Lake Taupo, although that's been managed through a variation in the policy of the regional council, it would take 50 to 60 years for that nitrogen loading to come through into the river, through the groundwater system. So in some cases, we had to accept it was going to get worse before it got better. But at least we were able to understand the system, what was coming through it, and how it might be restored over a period of time of over not hundreds of generations, but maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 generations, which is, if you count 20 years as a generation, or 25. So hence the sort of 70 to 80 year time frame. Would that be fair to say, Antoine?
That's right.
Yeah, and look, I guess it speaks to plan change 1 as well, is that load, that big load is still yet to come, that we still have to deal with. So the nitrogen load that is.
And from the farm to forestry to farm conversions that happened in the Upper Waikato in the early to mid 2000s.
Claire, final question.
Yes, thank you very much. And I just want to congratulate you, Anton, on being able to give us such a lovely rundown of the achievements. So I'm picking up on the point that you made, that you are considering some sort of new ways of doing things. And one of them was to look at a location where there might be a lot of different players, but they're all lined up.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I'm just thinking of our peat lakes, which, they're beautiful jewels of ecological systems and that, but they're really suffering. And we have just, and in fact, most of them are in Waipa. Yeah. And we've just been finalising a new reserve management plan for Lake Ngaroto. And the people that were involved in that, so they've got to know each other. Yeah. And I'd just like to suggest that you might like to consider that, actually, Lake Ngaroto. It's our biggest peat lake. It's probably got our biggest challenges, actually. And people have been working on it, for well over 15 years, I think, and not much improvement. But, if there was a concerted effort or something, or if the River Authority actually got involved as well, there's a chance that that collaboration that's already started, we've started to hold hands and work out how we could work together. Just might be a great opportunity, that's all. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Claire. Okay, I think if everyone is happy, we'll wrap it up here. Antoine, is there final thing you wanted to say?
Well, thanks again for the welcome. And one of the team members came and welcomed me at the top of the stairs outside, and so I knew exactly where to go. That was much appreciated. And thank you for the time and the really interesting questions as well. That was great. Thank you very much.
And thank you for your very interesting presentation. So it's been really helpful for us to understand a little bit more about what you do and how it will affect Waipa. And I'm sensing some applications maybe coming your way on specific projects by the way too.
Always good to have a conversation beforehand. If you've got a good idea, come and talk to our team, because we can turn the good idea into a good application.
Right. Well, we're going to invite you to lunch now, where
thank you.
Mike and Claire can fight over you on those projects. So, again, thank you, and we'll break now, everybody, until 12:40.
I was quite grateful there was no questions about our review for local government in the past.
that wants to be here? Okay, welcome back, everybody. Now, first of all, I'm just going to call for a mover and a seconder to receive the deputation presentation from Antoine from the Waikato River Authority. So Lou is going to move, Claire is going to second. All in favour? Carried. Okay, our next item is the 2025-34 Waipa Play Active Recreation and Sports Plan approval. And I'd like to welcome Brad to the table, but also the team from Sport Waikato, Steve and Hayden. A pleasure to have you both here today. Thank you for your patience. And I'm going to hand straight over to Brad to introduce the item. Thank you.
Ngā mihi o te rā tātou. Yes, we're here today to present the 2025 to 34 Waipa Play Active Recreation and Sport Plan for your approval. Typically with a plan such as this, we would normally go to a strategic planning and property policy or service delivery committee, but due to the priority of the long-term plan and the cadence of the meetings, we now seek approval from council. The plan is co-authored as part of our partnership with Sport Waikato, and it's to provide a prioritised action plan with goals to increase utilisation and satisfaction of our community to be physically active. You'll recall the council workshop Steve and Hayden led with yourselves using Lego, where we received good feedback from yourselves around activating adults through play a bit more and also utilising partnerships with some of our other providers such as schools. It is important to note approval of this plan does not commit council to any further funding at this point, but provides us direction and prioritisation for our current resources. And if there are any new initiatives, these will be explored and considered in future long-term plan processes. But happy to take any pātai or questions on this.
Thank you, Brad. Okay, do we have any questions, queries around the plan? Claire? And Roger.
Yes, thanks. I really like the plan. I mean, we've seen it before, I think, and talked about it. And so, yeah, I'm really supportive of it. I guess my question is, you know, that under the changes to the Local Government Act, you know, we're supposed to be focusing on just the basics. Yeah. I just like some reassurance, I guess, that is still like sport and recreation, you know, for our communities, you know, the facilities that council provides. Yeah, personally, I do feel that's core business. And so by adopting this, are we embarking on what people might call, you know, vanity projects or nice to haves? I mean, I do feel that, you know, what's presented here is really what we do a lot already. Yeah, so just a bit of reassurance around that, Brad. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm happy to stand corrected from anyone else, but in my mind, infrastructure such as sports fields or play, there is core infrastructure alongside our waters. You know, it has a crucial link to the health of our communities. You know, by having more people active, reduces our health costs, for example. So I would, in my opinion, I would consider that to be core infrastructure.
Yeah, and in the report, it's quite clear that anything that goes beyond that there would be, it's using the plan as a basis, you know, for seeking external funding in that. So it's not like we're sort of significantly increasing levels of service and stuff like that. Yeah. So on that basis, I'm happy to support the proposal.
Okay, thanks.
To move it.
Thanks, Claire. We've got Roger Dalmarie, then Lou.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Good. And thanks, Brad. Thanks, guys. I did have a question, and I actually asked myself the question. So excuse me, I've directed the question at myself, and I really did ask whether all of the recommendations reflected what our core business was, and whether or not some of those that were in the proposal, and particularly the last 2 pages, when we actually outlined the action plan, were actually nice to haves rather than must haves. You know, last week we did the LTP and we questioned a 15.5% increase and sent our guys back to have a look and say, well, where are there possibilities of savings of which there were none really that were of relevance to that discussion. But then we see the very week afterwards, we're considering a strategy and a proposal that has recommendations to which, having gone through, I've got dollars and dollars and dollars written against all those proposals. Now, what worries me about that is that those dollars are not defined. We've just got an open question over what those are going to cost us in terms of our OPEX for next year. And that to me is unsatisfactory. I'm not going to sign an open checkbook to give anybody the opportunity to come along and spend money that we cannot afford. So if anything, I would like to see us saying to these guys, look, we need to know, we need to have some indications. And although you say some are within our normal OPEX that we've got, I don't think that play streets and play on the way are within our normal operation. They are new concepts, new ideas, if you like, vanity projects. And I don't think as a council, that's our core business. So I'd like to see us pushing this back to the staff and saying, hey, come with some idea, even if it's within operations, what is going to be spent on some of these where they're not within the stated it's investigation, or we're going to have a look at how we can introduce those. They're not normal operations. So I'm really against us opening the checkbook and having an unsigned check there for next year.
All right, thanks, Roger. Look, I don't think that's quite the case. Brad, can I ask you to?
Yeah, if I can just respond to
provide
that through the chair. Look, this is a strategic document that we already have in place. It's a renewal of our, I think it's 2018 version. And it is a strategy document, and as a strategy-led organisation, we have these to help guide ourselves. So some of this will be delivered by us, some of it will be delivered in partnership with others, but it gives us the direction and priority of where to target. To use your example of Play on the Way, we're not looking to use any extra funding for that. It'd be a case of if we have some park budget, for example, that we put a simple thing like a hopscotch on the footpath of the park, or something very basic like that. We're not talking about big costs. Things that activate and engage people to move, to use different motor skills, just really, really basic things like that. So, yeah, as I say, through the long-term plan, we had a direction not to reduce level of service. We haven't gone outside of that. So, yeah, I don't feel we're introducing new money here or asking for any new money through this process at the moment.
May I ask a question, Brad, there? So from what you've just said, is it our role as a council to develop motor skills of our population? And that's what you said was going to be the outcome of putting, say, the hopscotch on the pavement. That's not our role to develop motor skills of the population.
Yeah, so look, I think let's let Brad answer that, but I think Claire.
Yeah, I'd just like to raise a point of order there, because I think Councillor Gordon's misinterpreting, what's been stated. And I think he's honing in on a particular aspect of what is a really high-level strategic document. What we're saying is, should we be approving a strategic document, not honing in on one particular aspect of motor skills, say if that's, something that's going to be developed, we should throw the whole thing out. I'm just feeling this is not quite relevant.
Okay. Good, yeah, take your point, Claire. Brad, did you have anything you wanted to respond?
No, I don't think, unless there's a specific question, I don't think there's anything else I need to say at the moment.
Okay, all right. Look, I've heard, Roger, I absolutely hear what you're saying, but I do agree with Claire that this is a high-level strategic document. And I don't think this is committing us to any funds. There aren't any funds, as Brad has already said, that are outside of normal operating budget. So I will take that as heard, and I think we'll move on. Claire?
Yeah, so I just want to pick up on Councillor Gordon's, I suppose his concern about the dollars and all that kind of thing. And I'd just like to point out that this approach with this strategic play active recreation document is really similar to Ahuaki in a way, where we're not using the checkbook that's got council's name on it solely, you know, like we are putting together you know, some sort of a visionary, you know, like it's a vision for the future, but it's not saying that council's going to pay for everything. It's giving a framework that others, we hope, will buy into certain parts of it, and they'll come up with the money, or some of them can be community initiatives.
Look, Brad expressly mentioned that as well. So look,
so that's why I find
yes.
I don't have an issue with that side of things. You know, that there aren't quantified dollars and things like that. I really like the fact that it's a framework that's divided, you know, the different activities up and or focus areas, and then said where the priorities are for us, because that actually helps a lot in directing people's energy and the dollars that are coming from hopefully externally, to meet some of these needs, which I think are really going to benefit our community. So that's why I supported it in the first place.
Yeah, I hear. Hey, look, just not to take anyone, you know, Roger, I just, you know, at the end of the day, we understand the financial pressures that are on all of us, especially at this time. So I don't want to take anything away from what you said, but at this point in time, I'd like to think that this document still stands as a high-level strategic document that will hopefully open up opportunities for partnerships and funding if there's something in particular that we see a real need for and agree with. Okay. Now, Dale Marie, you were next, and then I think Andrew.
Tēnā kōrua, tēnā koe Brad. I'm just going to support the staff recommendation, option 2, and push the motion. Kia ora rā.
Thank you, Dale Marie. Andrew, and then Lou, did you have, I had your name down. Yes, sorry, I think I missed you. So Andrew, then Lou.
I'm going to be very brief. Yeah, I think it's somewhat of a misrepresentation to call approving this recommendation equivalent to signing an open checkbook. That's not the case. It can't be. Everything is budgeted for line by line, and yeah. So I just want to make that, and I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Andrew. Right, Lou, your turn.
Yeah, thank you. I just had a little bit of concern about the health and physical education curriculum specialists in primary schools. We've actually got a very big program going on at the moment that is operational and is working, and we would like to keep that operational and not be changed too much, because both Ollie and Riley do a tremendous job, and they don't just do it in primary schools, they actually do it in intermediate, and they actually do it to college as well. So we have it. The other thing is that when you talk of providing insights, you've actually got, and you're looking at organisational surveys of the clubs, the community, would you actually envisage doing that of the schools as well? Because I think that, you know, just to see how that service is working out within our community is a critical part of a strategic plan. Because I think that we need to know just how successful they are. And hearsay is not as good as having someone like the teachers actually talking about it. So I just like those included. Thank you.
If I could, through the chair, Lou, I think you speak perfectly to our point of partnerships right there and then, you know, like using those, you know, clubs or schools to run those programs, not just council. So thank you for picking up that kaupapa for us. I will throw to Steve just around the surveying side of things.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for your question, and just follow on from Brad's point. It's around partnerships. We do already survey our schools, both secondary school and primary school as well, and it's something that we're continuing to grow on and improve as well. So we do that already. So thank you for your question.
It was just that it wasn't actually in your high profile. So
Totally, I appreciate it. Yeah.
All right, Mike.
Thank you, through the chair. A couple of comments. One is actually a specific one on page 54, and just around physical activity in spaces and places. Explore the opportunities for additional turf across Waipa network to support the regional hockey hub in Hamilton, which is fantastic, e.g. Te Awamutu. Is there any reason we put Te Awamutu in there? Yes. Because yeah, I know you haven't got a hockey pitch, but I just don't want you to get in first. So all I'm really saying, Lou, tongue in cheek, but maybe, I don't know whether EG is helpful, because these documents can somehow, they can take a what of their own down the track. So because I know Cambridge is in the same boat looking for one, so maybe I'm just suggesting maybe it's best to have nothing in there. Do we need an EG? Or if so, both sides of a swamp. And the other thing just in here is, and I know it's a specific area, and I may have missed this, so I've taken notes, but around the green belt, and I know it's an actual area, and maybe this is not for it, but how does the green belt around Cambridge fit into this document, and is it worth mentioning, or have I missed it? In terms of a play and recreation plan.
I think it's spoken to broadly through there, through a number of our, again, partnerships or existing assets, plus future development in the future. Like you spoke about one example there around potential for hockey, and there's opportunity to potentially partner with the race course and things like that. So we're still working through those. This plan gives us that direction to go and continue those conversations. It doesn't specifically spell out the town belt, but it's definitely included through the board outcomes.
All right, no, perfect. No, happy with that. So then just back to my page 54 comment, there'll be the only recommendation. I just don't think we should target a town, or if we do, then we just EG them both.
And from listening to the table, I'm pretty sure I was lip reading saying that you're happy for it to come out.
Yeah,
Is that right?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, very good.
100%. We're not tied to any specifics. If we want to take that out, that's not a problem. And the other thing that I would say is anything around the spaces and places perspective is around a network approach. So understanding what the whole network is and what's required in those areas. So absolutely take your point, and happy to remove that Te Awamutu example.
That's fine. And also picking up on Brad's, a lot of us is going to be about partnership. To make a lot of us happen is not going to be about just council. And so, hey.
And just to follow, it can't be, because actually we won't get stuff done if it is only done to one entity. So it has to be a combined approach.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. I believe that all the questions are now at an end, unless there's someone else who's got a burning question. No? Okay. Look, thank you both for coming in today. Really appreciate that. This is a great piece of work. It's going to hold us well for the future, I'm sure. We've got a recommendation on the table that Dale Marie has moved and Andrew has seconded, A, B and C on page 24. Can I have everyone all agreed with that? So all in favour, say aye. Against? Roger is going to, he would like it recorded.
Yes, please.
All right, motion is carried. All right, thank you again, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you, Brad. Thank you.
All right, everybody, we'll move on to our next item, which is the Audit and Risk Committee meeting. Hello, Jenny. We haven't seen you in a long time. Lovely to have you back here around the table.
Oh, I'm around.
All right, everybody, we're on page 60 of our agenda. Over to you.
Thank you. I'll take the report as read and will highlight the following. One of the most significant levels of uncertainty facing council in the wider business context is the Local Waters Done Well reform program. Depending on the decision made, it may trigger transition activity that needs to be completed over a short period of time. The annual risk workshop to review the top risks and risk appetite will be undertaken in August. This is an opportunity for council to set the risk profile for the coming year. The workshop will be co-facilitated with PwC, our new strategic internal auditors. The level of uncertainty in the global environment continues, with the current escalation in the Middle East occurring since the ARC meeting, and we discussed the geopolitical and geoeconomic risks. These are driving the trending up of top risk 8, change and business context. This uncertainty has been reinforced by the Reserve Bank of New Zealand financial stability report released in May. This risk will need further exploration at the risk workshop.
All right.
Happy to take questions.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, there are a number of appendices attached to your report. Any questions on any of them? Looking around the table.
Happy to move.
Lou, okay, right. In that case, Lou is happy to move and Roger, I believe, is happy to second. Oh, Mike has a quick question.
Through the chair, so you picked up on if Waikato Waters Done Well goes through, there's going to be probably organisational change. And I guess it's just confirming, Steph, that you, for the organisational change, if Three Waters goes through or the Waikato Waters Well Done goes through, have you got the staffing and capacity to do the review? If the submissions come in and Waikato Waters Done Well goes through, it's been alluded here that there's probably going to be a bit of a restructure. Have we got the capacity to do that?
Yes, we have. So that's exactly what I was discussing with you through the LTP process. And what I've been discussing with you for some time as councillor since I arrived here. And it's certainly also part of the Waters Transition Program, which we're currently scoping.
Yeah.
So, so at the moment, I'm comfortable that we'll be able to do what we need to do. If that was to change, I'll come back to you.
Thank you for that. Very good.
Okay, so we've got Lou's happy to move, Roger's happy to second. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. All right, we have Alice and Peter in the room. We're moving on to the shout about draft plan change 25. We'll give them a few minutes to get to their seats. Alice is back. Alice is back in the room. All good. All right, I'll hand straight over to you.
All done and dusted. Good afternoon. Today, I'm here to present the report, staff report relating to draft plan change 25, which is shelter bouts in artificial crop protection and support structures. And the purpose of today's presentation is to, sorry, I've just catch my breath. The purpose of today's presentation is to set out the final draft documentation along with the recommendations that the draft plan change proceed to public notification. So I'd like to take the report as read, but I do have a few statements and corrections to highlight.
Okay, thank you. Right, questions? Around the table, Claire's going first.
Oh, well, look, I'm really pleased to see this work coming to us, you know, for in anticipation of sending it out for public consultation. I did send through a lot of little minor corrections and things like that I picked up, but there wasn't anything of major significance, I don't think, in any of those things. I'm just, yeah, just want to commend you on the hard work, because it's been a lot of detail and a lot of consultation that's already taken place, and I think that that's been done really well, and that I think the feedback that we've received has put us in a good position now to have this plan change, yeah, ready to go out and yeah, to be considered.
Look, and as many of us know, this has been quite controversial. So I was really pleased to see that the extensive engagement actually that you have done here. I think that's been really important it's an important part of the process, but it's really important for our community to understand that, you know, we're looking for the best outcome here, the best decision we can make. It's not going to suit everybody. But yeah, that's our job, make the difficult decisions. So Alice, I'll hand back to you. Did you have some other bits and
I do.
pieces? Oh, and okay, Mike, you go first.
Look, there's a lot of pages here. So I was going through it last night. I couldn't see anything that was substantially different to what we last saw. And I just wanted to ask you, that is the case?
There are some, that's what I want to run through now. There are a couple of changes, but nothing substantial.
Okay, thanks, Alice. We'll let you carry on.
Cool, thank you. So in terms of, we've workshopped this with the elected members on a couple of occasions, so the sort of the theme and the topics is quite clear. But just wanted to clarify that the direction of Plan Change 25 is to provide artificial crop protection structures and support structures and shelter belts with a permitted activity pathway within the rural zone, while ensuring that the appropriate controls are in place to manage the adverse effects on the rural character, neighbouring properties, road safety infrastructure, and the identified landscapes and view shafts. Excuse me, we've, in terms of the evaluation report that we have presented to you, yes, it's very long. When I saw the agenda, it's roughly about 400 pages of your agenda, so apologise for that, but the detail is a must. In the evaluation report undertaken, it is determined that the objectives of Plan Change 25 are the most appropriate way to achieve the purpose of the Resource Management Act. The proposed provisions of Plan Change 25 are considered the most appropriate way to achieve the objectives of Plan Change 25, and those objectives are set out in the council report. And that Plan Change 25 responds, in our opinion, to the overall outcomes gained from our engagement with mana whenua, iwi and all the stakeholders. And that includes that wider community engagement that was undertaken last September, October last year. So accordingly, the final draft Plan Change 25 documentation recognises crop protection structures as part of farming activities that are anticipated and provided for in the rural zone, maintains the existing policy direction in the district plan to protect identified landscape areas and ensure that those rules are applied to crop structures, provides specific provisions for crop structures to differentiate them from other types of farming buildings, provides specific provisions for crop structures and shelter belts to ensure that any actual potential adverse effects on amenity, health and safety are avoided, remedied or mitigated, and ensures that there is consistent administration of the district plan when determining what provisions are to be applied when developing a crop protection structure in a rural zone or the planting and maintenance of a shelter belt. As I said, there are some additional amendments that I'd like to walk through with you now. The package of information contains the full draft documentation. There are the amendments. Firstly, you'll see that there are some red text in the Appendix 1 and Appendix 4 relating to completion of the draft documentation in terms of following this meeting, and also to update in terms of the advice that we have received from iwi since the agenda was finalised. In particular, as part of the 32 process, the 32 evaluation report must be given to all iwi authorities. And at the close of agenda, we had received commentary from Waikato Tainui. Recently, we have also received advice from the Rakawa Settlement Trust as well. And so that information will be added post today. Just to say that, I'm just going to quote what the email was. It was they have advised that the Trust, that while their main concern is with the identification and protection of sites of significance to Māori throughout the district, they accept that the inclusion of the cultural landscape within the district plan is outside the scope of Plan Change 25. But however, they remain interested in discussing how the values identified in the cultural landscapes can be introduced into the district plan. So we have had discussions, and it's set out in both the 32 evaluation report and in my council report that the scope of 25 was very succinct and that the matters relating to identification of sites of significance is a wider district matter that should have its own planning framework put around it at some point in time. So secondly, in finalising the draft planning provisions, staff have made the following changes since we last workshopped the document with you in February. Keep going, sorry. These are set out in Appendix 2 to the report. Firstly, that the definition of shout about has been amended just to identify that a hedge with the maximum height of 3 metres or less when located outside of a view shaft or the State Highway 3 scenic corridor is not a shout about. Second one is Rule 44257A, which is the performance standards for shout-abouts in the rural zone. And we had a setback from the national gas pipeline of 6 metres, have had further discussion with First Gas, and they have recommended that their standard setback is 10 metres. So we've amended that to now align with the electricity setback of 10 metres as well. The, excuse me, assessment criteria on colour and material and height of a crop protection structure has been integrated into the landscape areas. There have been some minor changes with regards to alignment of assessment criteria. And then thirdly, the changes to Section 25 when relating to the assessment of buildings for view shafts and landscapes. There was an exception for crop protection structures. We've now refined that to the exception being to the colour of the material. So the structure will still be considered, but the colour of material will be considered separately from that rule. Thirdly, there is still to be a final editorial sweep of all documentations to pick up any grammatical errors in spelling, and that will be done prior to notification. As part of some of the feedback from elected members prior to the meeting, there was a question with regards to the national direction and whether there was a risk in not adopting the national planning standards through Plan Change 25. The application, so that has been canvassed through both the Section 32 documentation and again through the council report. But I can just say that the application of the national planning standards is should not occur in an ad hoc manner, and it needs to be introduced into the district plan via a specific plan change. However, noting that we're in the midst of the resource management reforms and there is to be a new resource management system, so it's actually appropriate to wait for that. So in a nutshell, that's the 400 and something pages that you've trolled through, so I'm happy to answer questions.
Look, thank you, Alison. Look, we've really, here been responding to a need from our community and in terms of clarification of so much of this farming. So, right, we've got a question from Bruce, and then we'll go to Lou.
Alice, the provisions that you've come up and you engage with our neighbouring councils, is there any consistency between councils, like what we've got in front of us to what Waikato has or South Waikato?
So what we're proposing is slightly more restrictive than what is in the Waikato plan, but we feel that what we are proposing aligns with what our community has raised in terms of concerns and mitigating those concerns.
Lou?
Very quickly, through you, Madam Chair. I think this just tidies up something that was quite a difficult subject. Okay, it's actually, it avoids unnecessary resource consent applications. So I think this is good. I'm happy to move or second it or whatever. I'm very happy to. get this progressing, because I think it sets a criteria that people can work with and have it public.
Thank you, Lou. Any questions? No? Okay. Mike?
Yeah, through the chair. Lou's mentioned we were moving resource consents, but actually on page 124, and this is just of interest, we're actually adding one in, and that's for add new rule 441.3, and that's when you want to take a line of trees down, and you'd have to get a resource consent. There's a couple of conditions here, but what was in there before? Could you just sort of take them down no matter what? Well, there's some conditions in here that triggers the resource consent, but taking the shuttle bit down now, if you don't meet these 2 points, you have to have a consent.
That's correct. What we have addressed is that there's an exception in terms of the setback if you have an existing screened shelterbout, so that visually the proposed crop structure wouldn't be seen as obviously. But in doing that exception, if someone then gains the permitted activity status and builds their crop protection structure on the basis that they've had it screened, we don't then want them to turn around and just take that screening away. So that is that provision for a resource consent to remove. It is only if it's already screening existing, and it's to ensure that we don't have an anomaly that someone puts something up and then can whip away the screen.
Yeah, gotcha. And as it mentions, it's case by case, so sort of that makes sense.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions around this? So the plan is to put this out to public consultation, but I believe that there is a few tweaks to the recommendation. So is that correct, Jo? Should we pop it up on the screen?
Yeah, I think it's just to do with the conversations with iwi and making sure that we are understanding what we're committing to and what the agreements have led to. And I'm just thinking that a few of us are sitting here a little bit uncertain. So Joe's got a draft recommendation, but I'm just looking at Councillor Dale Marie, just to make sure that we're comfortable about where we've landed, and team will take your advice on it. Are you comfortable?
I think this is a bigger conversation, the significant sites.
Yeah, so it's beyond this, which are definitely beyond this plan change.
Kaupapa.
Yeah.
But I would take some guidance from you around this, please.
Yeah, okay.
All right, okay, so we've got an extra sentence in the recommendation, and I think what Steph has said is that based on your advice, actually, Alice, you mentioned that iwi, some of the feedback that has come back will be considered as part of a district plan change at some point in the future. That's really, I think, Dale Marie, what you're hoping for, given it's a wider conversation.
So I think what we're, and that must be Lou's shout. Through Liz as the chair, I think the staff recommendation is that feedback received through ongoing conversations with our JMA partners is incorporated into the Section 32 analysis before it is consulted on. Is that possible?
That is actually what
That's the intention?
where the intention is in terms of highlighting it today. Yes.
Thank you. Thanks for that clarification.
Not at the moment. I just want to make sure that there's no other questions around this. I think Alice, you summed it up very well earlier around what you're hoping to achieve through this. So I think it's a good compromise, actually. So if there's no other questions, Lou, you had offered to move the amended motion, which is up there, A, B, C, and D, and Claire's happy to second. All right, so all in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. All right, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks, team. Well done. It's been a big piece of work. So
Huge
thank you.
piece of work. Yeah, quite right. All right, Robin, haven't seen you in a long time either. So welcome. You are here to talk to us about the district-wide stormwater operations and maintenance contract, the extension of the contract. So everybody, this is on page 550. And I'll hand over to you.
Kia ora, everybody. Yes, it has been a long time since I've sat in this chair. I'm here with regard to the district-wide stormwater maintenance contract, and we're looking to extend it by 8 months. This is very much a maintenance contract, as in scheduled rates for cleaning things, cameraing things, cleaning things on a number of sites. The reasons for the extension are primarily about we're trying to avoid variations going forward because we're in the process of achieving our new urban stormwater discharge consent, which, just for information, the limited notification on that by regional council finished probably a week, 2 weeks ago, and we didn't get any submissions on it, which was fabulous. So we're just waiting for regional to issue our consent conditions for that. But part of the interaction with this is that new consent will require us potentially to do a lot more maintenance in a different way, different locations, different styles. So we didn't want to effectively tender something that we were then going to vary with regard to scope as soon as we knew the detail of that consent and how it landed. I'm open to questions.
Right, thank you for that. Roger.
Yeah, hi, Rob. Just the increase in fee that you've got, and you've mentioned that the future will see some increased requirements operationally in terms of, does that increase include a compensation for some of those additional activities for the balance of the contract?
Through the chair. No, the extension is for the present scope of works as it's presently understood and as they've been delivering it for the last 2-3 years. So we've not incorporated any potential new scope into this extension for the 8 months. They've obviously had to reprice and add inflation onto what they were doing previously for these 8 months, but that is very easy to assess where it's value for money because it's literally the same scope with an inflation rate on, and their rates reflected that. So I'm confident it's value for money. But to answer your question, it's the present scope of works, not the additional stuff that we think may be coming along.
What you've just said there is that additional increase is just a pro rata increase that you're happy with, plus a cost of living, an inflationary adjustment.
Yeah, it's literally a pro rata with inflation for the next 8 months, which wasn't in the original scope of works. Contract duration.
Thank you, Robin. Roger, you happy? Lou.
Yeah, thank you very much. Long time since we've seen each other. Thank you very much for the time. I do realise what this is. This is just an interim agreement because we're going into a CCO and we're going to be probably looking at different levels of service being requested of us over a period of time. This is something that is integrated, locked into our civil defence emergency management. And we do need to know what they're going to put in the new act, if they do. So that could be quite significant changes, and particularly to territorial authorities. So I'm in agreement with what you're doing, and I understand the increase in charges, on the grounds that we do need to maintain these facilities to the best we possibly can and to the current structures. So I'm very supportive of what you're doing.
Thank you, Lou. All right, any other questions for Robin? Okay, we have a recommendation, A through to D, and Mike Montgomery is going to move it, and Dale Marie, were you seconding it? Or Lou was going to second it? All right, Lou will second. All in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, Robin.
Yes, well done, Rob. Thank you.
Waikato Waters Limited Incorporation, approval in principle. So we've got Steph addressing this item as well as Carl, who I believe is online. There you are, Carl. Right, we'll hand straight over to you.
Welcome, Carl. And just for councillors' update, so this follows the recent meetings we've had and the workshop we had last week where we indicated what these recommendations were, why the in principle decision is helpful, just to ensure that the transition is as smooth as possible should council vote for Waikato Waters done well. So on that basis, I'll hand to you, Carl. Thank you.
Thanks, Steph. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Apologies for not being in person today. But a lot of the content I'm just going to talk through quickly is items that we covered off in the workshop last week. As Steph pointed out, the purpose of the paper and the attachments is for us to confirm that we're happy with the foundation documents that set up the Waikato Waters Limited CCO, should we choose later in July to proceed with that option for our water services delivery in the future. The documents are unchanged from the versions that you saw at the workshop last week and are attached, and I'm happy to take any comments or questions on those documents. I'm not sure whether you had an update earlier in the council workshop, but other councils have been also in similar meetings to this, both today and earlier in the week, and have 5 of the 7 have confirmed their either acceptance of the model or acceptance to or agreement to sign the foundation documents. So that's good news. The purpose for bringing this to you today is not only, as Steph pointed out, to make the process easier later in July, but also to give those other councils confidence as they proceed to approving the documents that we are also aligned in terms of the content of the documents. So I wasn't intending to go through the documents in detail unless anyone's got any questions, or if there's any other items you wanted me to cover off, Steph.
No, I think we're good. Right, questions. Monty.
Just checking here, Carl. Is this a decision to approve in principle or a decision to approve subject to us entering Waikato Waters done well? And if that does happen, are you coming back to us, or is this it?
The idea is not to come back to you on these documents if the decision in July is to proceed.
Great. That's how I understood it. I was just being really clear, because to me, this is slightly not a decision in principle. This is a decision subject to. But it's so long as everyone understands it, I was happy. I just wanted to point it out.
Yeah, and just for extra clarification, of course, we are hearing the submissions on this next week. So pending the outcome of that, these documents are subject to exactly what Monty said.
Yeah, sorry, can I just confirm that on page 558 of Diligent, section 3, recommendation, and it is D, subject to the Waikato Waters Well decision being approved by council approves. So it's a subject to conversation.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I was perfectly happy. I was just pointing it out. I was being pedantic.
It's really important. It's very important. Thank you, Monty.
Claire.
Yeah, thanks. And I think that it reflects that there's been a lot of work put into the crafting of these foundational documents. So I'm pretty comfortable with the provisions that are in there. I have sent through a lot of questions to Carl, and I think they are, I've had reasonable responses to them. I mean, there's still lots of detail to work out how it's all going to fit together. Yeah. What I take comfort in is the approach of all those involved, that are committed to working positively together for this. So I definitely wanted to say that. I also want to say that I'm not feeling that comfortable about how much information we have about the transition. Yeah, so I am reasonably uneasy that we don't have that much information about what's going to be involved. And so I do have concerns that even though from my point of view, I feel that the legislated pathway has been laid out pretty clearly for us. Lots of lights along the edges to say, this is the way to go, this is the way to go, and I understand that. But there are huge changes that we might be facing, at a local level as council here for us. And yeah, I'm a bit disappointed, I guess, that we haven't had enough time to understand that in more detail, or yeah, I'm not really pointing the finger at staff or at Steph. I sort of feel like it's the whole process in a way. It's the urgency that central government, you know, are cracking the whip on this to try and get us to a certain point, you know, by a date and things like that. But it does mean that I do think there's still a lot of uncertainty, yeah, that on the other side of the ledger. Yeah.
Claire, I couldn't agree with you more. I think I just want to acknowledge the acknowledgement of the work in to date with this, and it's been a huge amount of work. What I am learning a lot about through this process, what substantive change management principles, and before the three first elements of any substantial change management process are about mandate, then they're about governance decisioning, and then they're about legal decisions. And beyond that are a whole lot of other streams of work. 7 councils have been working for the last, 9 months, but actually probably 3 years, a lot longer than that, to get mandate from the community. You have been working very hard as governors to understand what that looks like and to do the initial legal work, which is represented in this paper. I am like you. I want to know exactly what we're embarking on, how we're going to manage this for the next year. What does the transition look like, not just in terms of establishing the CCO, but what does that mean for our organisation and also Post Waters? So I'm leading a piece of work as the lead CE with the 7 councils, and we are doing some very deliberate and intentional change management thinking with some very qualified specialists, so that we can agree as 7 councils what those change management principles look like and how we might step through them. Once those frameworks are agreed, that means we are all consistently working through programs, because we are not the same as 7 councils. We are similar, but we're not the same. And it means we can then apply principles, formulas, frameworks back into our own organisations. And at that point, we will be able to bring you information. We are lining up all our ducks, but there is a very deliberate, intentional process, and it's they are well-tested frameworks internationally when you're going through substantive change like this. And we can all point to disasters of change, any number of them, and I don't want to be responsible for that. So doing everything possible at the moment to make sure we are framing this up for success. I do want to qualify that by saying, because of the drivers from central government and our own financial drivers, this is at speed, and it is a substantial change process, the biggest we will have undertaken since '89. And so we will need to work at this collectively with open minds, a constructive conversation and purpose, and knowing, keeping our eye on the goal of what we're trying to achieve, and knowing that it is going to be a very pressured transition program. So I'm not saying, what I'm trying to paint the picture of to say is it's exciting. It's certainly exciting that 5 of the 7 councils have elected to join it, but we've got a path, a challenging but exciting program ahead.
Right, any other questions? Monty?
Just responding to that, that's good to hear, Stephen. I just want to say, from what I've observed, it's going well so far. So it feels like it's on track from where I'm sitting, but the next 12 months is going to be critical. So here.
Absolutely, I think we all concur with you. All right, everybody, we've got a recommendation on page 559. Maybe it's 558 actually. So A right through to H. So Andrew is going to move, Marcus is going to second. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Liz.
Right, we're moving on to our council seal on page 730.
Thanks, Carl. Sorry.
Oh, yes.
Acknowledging them. Thanks.
See you, Carl.
Thank you.
Page 713, document signed under council seal. Any queries around that? No? Okay. Claire is happy to move. Bruce is happy to second. All in favour? Against? Carried. Okay, everyone, that is the last of our public items. So we will just take a short break and we'll be moving into a public excluded session. So I need a mover and a seconder, please, for that. So Philip's going to move, Dale Marie's going to second. All in favour?